Tonight's panel is the launch of our programs accompanying the exhibit, Bending the Arc, a uniquely Boulder story of LGBTQ plus rights. These programs were sponsored by the Boulder Community Health Foundation, so let's whoop it up for them. We are not a city-funded organization, so thank you for paying for a ticket tonight. And please consider joining us as a member and attending some more programs in the future. The full series is listed on the flyer in your chair, so please join us for the next one on May 12th, Remembering Clela Rorex, featuring Ann Noonan, who certainly deserves a spot on this panel. Marty Moore, who surely we all know and love for her advocacy. Mark Spiegel, who rented a room from Clela and volunteered on her campaign. And Hillary Hall, who followed Clela's legacy as Boulder County Clerk from 2006 to 2018 and issued hundreds of marriage licenses to same-sex couples in 2014 before the Colorado Supreme Court ordered her to stop. Then on May 19th, we will have a history of Boulder human rights ordinances, featuring more people very deserving of a spot on this panel. Sue Larson, who has a major role in the passage of Boulder's still standing so-called gay rights law, and Glenda Russell, who I've lost track of, who has been researching and documenting Boulder LGBTQ plus history, alongside Karen Paget, who was deputy mayor under Mayor Tate II in 1974 and is flying out for this, so not a night to be missed. And one of the children of Mayor Tate, probably Paula, but to be announced. And so if you don't know what makes Boulder's human rights ordinances interesting, be sure to check out the exhibit downstairs. Before we begin, I want to acknowledge some other sponsors. First Congregational United Church of Boulder, the Boulder Arts Commission, Bob Morehouse, the SCFD, the Community Foundation of Boulder County, Visit Boulder, Create Boulder, the Burgess Group, Boulder County, the City of Boulder, and Louise, who is contributing to filming tonight by our dear friend Dr. Courtney Russell. Which will be available in about a month on our YouTube channel. So you can ask any of the panelists for a link if you want to send that around. Without further ado, let's get to know these amazing activists. So to start us off, can you each introduce yourselves to the audience and tell us what motivated you to be active in the particular way that you were? And spend a few minutes sharing your own unique history and that you bring to the panel.
We'll start. I'm Karen Rayforth. I'm a retired psychologist. I've been in K-12 a little bit in my life, but mainly in higher education as a psychologist, as a student, as a Dean of Students, Associate Vice Chancellor, Associate Vice President, Vice President here at CU, as well as down at the Auraria campus. So I think part of my function on this panel has to do with doing activism. And for me, it's activism as well as advocacy and service. That my profession is about service, but being in an ARM, it's also about advocacy. You're always advocating for students or faculty or staff. And luckily for me, I started out advocating in the women's movement on campus and moved into the LGBT and then finally T movement on campus much later. T for C, it took a long time. So I'm going to run you through a little bit of the history with the idea of how important it is to know how to work within a system. because you need people on the outside pushing and screaming and yelling, and you need people on the inside doing the magic as well. So I'll be talking about that. And part of my motivation in life has always been you need to pay your place at the table. So I always feel like I need to be giving back and doing something, not just for me, but for everybody to make this a better planet. And we certainly are in a time of being able to do that and just pick any topic. But drawing up
Hey, my name is Sue Coffey. I direct choruses. I currently direct Resonance Women's Chorus and Sound Circle. Sound Circle's gently wrapping up. We've got one more concert to do. I wondered if I could just show of hands people that have sung in one or the other of those groups. And it's a lot of overlapping circles of community. Also, a little shout out to my book group, which is a lesbian book group that's existed for over 30 years. There's a whole bunch of them here. So I really have just done one thing, and that's direct choruses within the LGBTQ choral community. I intersected with that choral community when I joined the Denver Women's Chorus in 1991, and a shout out to Deb Kenyon and much gratitude to her. She was directing at the time. I was up in Greeley. I had moved from New York to Greeley. Weird move to study music, but seriously, it was like, I'll stay the same size fish and I'll move to a smaller pond and I will get more experience conducting, and it worked really well. But I was kind of treading water. I couldn't really see my path. And my dad was a management consultant, and he was very cool, and he was always trying to talk to us about setting goals and having a vision and looking ahead in life. And I was like, Dad, I'm 7, but through my 20s, I was trying. I was really trying to be intentional. I could not see my path, and I realized later it's because it hadn't been invented yet. Because doing these choruses, these message choruses in the lesbian community is like the perfect thing for me. I've had a million conversations with myself about what else I might do, and this just works for me so incredibly well. And so I'm incredibly grateful to a person who put a poster up for the December 1990 Denver Women's Chorus concert at Alberto's Mexican restaurant in Greeley, because I went to that concert because I saw that poster. And seriously, that was a pivotal moment in my life. And when I joined the chorus a month later, I just realized, I see a path to a happy life, like my personal life, my lesbian life, my musical life, my political aspirations and ideals can all coexist here in a happy way. And I really feel like if that person had not put that poster up, I don't know what I would be doing. I'd have a completely different life, and I don't know if I'd still be doing music. So it's been a very focused 30 years now that I'm very grateful for.
Just be alive and just
Hi, my name's Louise Knapp, and I've been in Boulder since the early 70s, and my background is kind of a little more rebellious, I guess, because I was at Kent State in 1970, so a lot of intense feelings around that and anti-war activism. And then moving into feminism was just a natural thing because I discovered feminism and also lesbian feminism, which kind of saved my life. And when I moved out to Boulder, I just thought really what needs to happen is there needs to be some community here. And I was doing, blue collar jobs and union organizing, things like that. But I really wanted to focus on creating community, and I got together with several other feminists and lesbian feminists, and we started the Boulder Socialist Feminist Collective in 1975. And then I also was involved with the Boulder Lesbian Network in 1978. And those were just really, things that were very important to me. And then I opened Word Is Out Women's Bookstore in 1994. So I've had, my fingers in a lot of different pots, but that's it in a nutshell.
So I think the words.
Hi, my name is Susie Pringle, and gosh, thanks for being here. It's nice to see so many familiar faces and new faces. Some of you haven't met, but I know a lot of you from various hats that I've worn in the community. I am a Boulder native. I was born in Boulder Community Hospital, went to Boulder High School, so I've lived most of my life in Boulder County, and I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot come and go. I wasn't, and I didn't really consider myself an activist. I wasn't necessarily an activist in my younger coming out days. I think I was too busy chasing girls. But a lot of, yeah, thanks, sir. And a lot of you know me as the dance lady. I seem to be known for that in the community and wherever I go, because I helped found and run Dancing Divas starting in 2002. And we're still going strong. I did have moments where I decided that I had to do something. And a couple of those moments were when the city council was doing all of their debating about the human rights ordinance. And first they passed one and then they took it away. And I came back from college right about then. And I had grown up in the Baptist church that's just down the street. And I was real involved in youth fellowship, and I met most of my friends there. And when I came back, I opened up the Boulder Camera, and there was a full-page ad taken out by the Baptist church, signed by all of the members, saying that they were against this ordinance. And that just felt so hurtful and unjust to me and made me mad. And so I came out. It already came out, but it came out more visibly in the community. Then there was Amendment 2, and I was working at the time in the Boulder Valley School District Safe and Drug-Free Schools program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but we had a lot of leeway in that program to serve at-risk youth. And so I really advocated, along with Candy Thompson Hyatt, that we serve gay youth and we target gay youth for our interventions and our prevention activities because they're the highest risk kids there are. Glenda Russell was teaching a class for us called Understanding Homosexual Youth. And there were about 40 counselors, administrators, teachers in the class. And the day after Amendment 2 passed, I came to the class and I came out to everyone in the school district, which, was one big act of bravery for me because I could have lost my job. I mean, almost all the teachers were closeted then, and you could lose your job for being gay in the schools. So I was in a unique position where I could do some subversive advocating. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But those are the things that when it was just so wrong, so unjust, and it made me mad, and I felt like I have to do something. So I had that experience, and Dancing Divas. I also helped create a community coalition that involved the sheriff, George Epp, the district attorney, Alex Hunter, Health and Human Services, Youth Services, Safe House. We put together a coalition and applied for a federal grant and received $1 million to do prevention activities in the county. Some of you might remember that. And again, I advocated really strongly for focusing on gay youth because they're our most needy kids out there. So I feel like here in I was about creating community and also advocating.
You can hold on to that, Susie. Oh boy. So, since we'll be talking throughout time as we go through the panel, I want to start with some orientation to some of those time markers that we might be discussing so that those in the audience who didn't live through this or don't have a chronology in their head have some sense of that. Would you or someone take us through that?
Sure. Glenda Russell made this really easy for me because I did a lot of pertinent works, and I just tried to summarize what's on the posters in the display downstairs, which are fabulous. Kind of starting in the 1970s, the Gay Liberation Front was formed on the CU campus, and they sponsored the barn dances out at Hidden Valley Ranch. Did any of you go to those? My own president. I remember this one really well because I was home from college again for the weekend, and I went to the dance, and I was so used to coming and going at college that, I didn't think about getting in at 2 a.m. But my mom was waiting up for me, and she was really mad, and she just kept saying, "Where were you? Where were you?" And that was really hard because I was just like, I went to a party with some friends, and then we went out to breakfast. But that was one of my first experiences of being in community. I mentioned the swing, the Boulder City Council up until early 70s was, old white men. And deja vu. But then there were some changes, and we got Penfield Tate as the mayor, and some women and the closeted gay men on the council. And then they passed the human rights ordinance, and there was so much backlash that there was a recall effort for Mayor Tate and for Tim Fuller, and in 74, that human rights ordinance was shot down. In 1975, we had the wonderful occasion of this 50th anniversary of Cleela Rorick's issuing marriage certificates, marriage licenses, which was a pretty cool thing and, surprising for its time. I guess 1978, for a few years, there was the Boulder Lesbian Network. And that heads nod, you were part of that, and Louise was real involved in that. And then we're going to jump forward kind of into the 80s. 85, Boulder County AIDS Project was formed. And, the whole AIDS epidemic really brought a lot of visibility, not necessarily the kind we wanted, but a lot of visibility to the gay community. And so a lot of different efforts were spurned out of that. In 87, Sue Larson, Kat Morgan, and some others petitioned to force a ballot issue to include sexual orientation in the human rights ordinance, because we hadn't had it since it'd been shot down. And this time, Boulder voters restored that ordinance, which was a big, yes, that you drove your car. No, that was what happened too. You drove your car all over the state, like put 200,000 miles on it. That was 5 years. 5 years later. Yeah, 4 years then, because I did that for a year. Okay. In 86, Dana Dershwell opened the Walnut Cafe, and it became a real gathering place and the hangout, and Dana contributed a lot to community organizing. And also about that time, the Socialist Feminist and the Socialist Collective formed, and earlier.
75, yeah.
75, sorry.
Yeah,
No, better than 75.
it went on an arc, so.
It was on, thank goodness. Oak
It's 90.
was involved with that, and
Both was involved with Vox.
Oak was with Vox Feminista.
all right, I've pushed together the radical feminists. They're like that. They're out there being radical, and we need that.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1992 was Amendment 2, which prohibited cities and organizations from including sexual orientation in anti-discrimination policies. Ooh, and that's when Sue drove her car all over the state for a year, put on 200 or 300,000 miles. Or,
It was a Honda, you know?
of course, no, I'm surprised there wasn't a Subaru. And people lied because they said they were going to vote against it, and we thought we were going to do okay. And then,
Right.
yeah, and Amendment 2 passed. So a few years later, Jeannie Weiner, Jean Dubosky, and team took it to the Colorado Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court blocked it. And in '96, the U.S. Supreme Court shot down Amendment 2. In the meantime, it was hard in Colorado because we became known as a hate state, and there were boycotts, and it was nasty. But the U.S. Supreme Court shooting down Amendment 2 was so important because not only for us, but it set a precedent. It set precedents for a lot of cases that were come after that, which was really, really valuable. Jumping back just a little bit, in '93, the City Human Rights Commission began a Valuing Diversity project. In '95, the CU Resource Center opened, and they initiated a lot of campus activism and opportunities for visibility. In '94, the Safe and Drug-Free Schools Act was passed, which was important to me because then Candy and I could do all our subversive activities. And in '98, Matthew Shepard was killed. In 2002, Dancing Divas started up, and we're still going strong. In 2001, CU regions voted to include sexual orientation in their non-discrimination policy. Excuse me. So, a lot out of this earlier work just stimulated more, and soon we moved into individual states trying to pass marriage acts for people. Colorado did not pass a marriage act, but other states did, and finally, with Edie Windsor's case, we got a federal right to marriage act, which I'm really happy about. Because then I got married, and it was so. I won't go into a lot more details. You can look at the books downstairs, but there's been a lot going on, and a lot I haven't mentioned. I know a lot of you have been involved in activism that I didn't touch on, and I just want to honor your bravery. And now is the time where we all need to be brave again.
That's right.
So with this panel, we have a real mix of what activism looks like in the many different forms, some of the many different forms it can take. But let's start with the guerrilla stuff. Why don't you launch us off?
Guerrilla stuff. Okay. So we started in 1975, Boulder Socialist Feminist. We couldn't decide if we were socialist feminists or feminist socialists. So, and we were also guerrilla theater people. We were also had a little flavor of anarchy in our organization. So our full name was the Boulder Socialist Feminist, Feminist Socialist, Anarchist, Guerrilla Theater Collective.
And some of the milestones that Susie has talked about interwove with what we were doing. And so we started in 1975 when Cleela did her wonderful, amazing, brave act of issuing the first same-sex marriage licenses. Our main focus was, well, we had like a three-pronged focus. We did guerrilla theater. We also did, we zapped some billboards. And then we also did, we did workshops at CU for International Women's Week. I'll just talk about just a couple of those things. We were there, we were around for 15 years. We did dozens of actions. But shout out to the campus lesbian gay group because they started picketing Isadora's, which was a bar in Boulder, and that was kicking out same-sex couples for dancing together. And so there were pickets going on, and pickets, sometimes they backfire because the community's like, oh, well, this is really interesting. I want to go to this bar and find out what's really going on. So we ended up deciding on a zap of their billboard. This is around the time of Anita Bryant's homophobic campaign. She was the orange juice spokesperson, if you remember. So Isadora's
Former Miss America.
Former Miss America, yep. Lived in Florida and did the orange juice commercials. And Isadora's had a big billboard above their bar, 9th and Canyon. That was our favorite spot for billboards. And so we did a billboard with a kind of a stencil lettering on the billboard that said Anita Bryant's seal of approval. But we did a bunch of other billboards, a lot of sexist billboards that we would zap. We almost got caught a couple times. That was exciting. But we didn't. We never got caught. Also, same year as Isadora's, the CU Law School used to have fundraisers, and the fundraiser was for, the law school. They would show a porn movie to raise money for the law school.
It was like, it was maybe 78.
78, maybe. We're not sure exactly, but it was
Earlier than 78, if I remember it.
okay. Earlier, we don't know the date.
So I think it's last sent by
Well, it would have to be at least 75 because anyway, so they did this every year. The law school did this every year to raise money for the law school. And this particular year, the movie was Deep Throat, and we decided we had to do something. And so a couple of people, the night the movie was showing, a couple of people went over to the place where the movie was showing, the auditorium, and one of us went up to the projection booth and started talking to the projection guy. Maybe she was flirting a little, maybe she was distracting him. Anyway, at a certain point, she grabbed the reel that was sitting against the wall in a can. She grabbed it and threw it down to her compatriot who was down below, and they ran off with it. They could not show the movie. I guess they refunded everybody who wanted a refund.
what you call downloading, right?
Yeah, downloading, yeah. And they got caught because somebody recognized the woman running across the auditorium with this reel in her hand. They did get caught. Jeannie defended them and got them off because they weren't really stealing it because it didn't belong to the law school, it belonged to the rental place. And so it was returned to the rental place, no harm done by them. So, anyway,
Early return.
yeah, early return, yeah. In 1980, the Basemar Theater was showing a movie called Cruising, and it was a slasher movie about a man who was picking up gay men at a bar, bringing them home and killing them. And this is something that, the campus gay group was leafleting, they were writing letters to the editor, there were protests. Nothing helped. In fact, this was another instance where it had the effect was that more and more people wanted to see the movie because it was getting so much attention. And a lot of what we did, we resorted to things that were maybe extra legal because the legal things did not work. And this was a case of that. And so we did things like super gluing the locks to the building, splashing red paint on the marquee, and then finally there was somebody set off some stink bombs in the theater right at the beginning of the movie, emptied the theater, everybody had to get their money back, and it never opened again with that movie. And if my memory serves, I'm not sure they remained open as a theater. So we did things like that, and then we did other things that were legal, like guerrilla theater on the mall, and we did several of those. The mall was a perfect place for guerrilla theater. And in 1986, the Supreme Court upheld Georgia's sodomy laws. And that was kind of a blow for all of us queer folk, and we decided to do a guerrilla theater. So we had some t-shirts made, black t-shirts, white letters that said Sodomy Patrol. We went down on the mall with binoculars and cameras and clipboards. Q-tips, yeah. We weren't sure what they were for, but Q-tips. And we wandered up and down the mall saying, turn in your family member, turn in your neighbor, turn in your boss or your minister or whatever. And a lot of people, some people got it right away. Some of the people didn't know about the decision. And so we would go up one-on-one and talk to people, and they'd go, oh, yeah, I get one. Yeah, okay. And some people never got it. There was one woman that I talked to at length from Houston, and, I started talking about, camps and barbed wire and, rounding people up, we could, there's all kinds of things we could do. And by that point, most people get it. But she did not. And she said, well, I'm from Houston. We don't have anything like this in Houston. So, those are just a few things that we did. And there's a scrapbook in the back. You can look at stuff there, too. So, yeah. Well, I don't think, Jeannie, who was in...
Who's in that?
Oh, Judy. Yeah, Jeannie. Yeah, we were a small group. We decided to call ourselves a collective. We were closed. We decided if more people were interested and wanted to join, and we wanted to keep it small, so we thought we would see other groups if that was of interest to people. But we were closed, and that worked really well for us. We met every week, we didn't have to keep reviewing what, if it was an open group, you have to go back and say, okay, last week, this is what we talked about. So, good attendance was expected, things like that. We were pretty,
It was a marriage.
It was a marriage. Yeah. So, but yeah, 15 years of stuff. And I did make this little scrapbook back there, which has inspired me to add to it because there's a lot more that can be added.
So let's move to some of the more structural forms of activism, which a lot of times we overlook as being considered activism. Can you speak to us about that?
Sure. Well, as you can already hear from what Louise and also Susie already told us about, is there was clearly a town-gown relationship going on anyway, that a number of the students were very active in the community, as well as faculty and staff. Looking at you, Shania. And it's a story that weaves back and forth, but I'm going to try to highlight just a few things that were going on campus that I think moves things more rapidly. And of course, the best thing that moved things was Amendment 2. And that having that pass was like a slap across the face of a lot of people who were just sure that it would be okay in Colorado, and they were very shocked. And certainly my experience was even next door neighbors who supported me were saying, no, this is the way to vote for it. This is what to do. And they were confused even by that ballot initiative. So you're going to hear a lot about that on another panel. So I'm not going to get too far. I'm not going to get into that at all. And you're going to hear more about K-12, and you're going to hear more about CLELA. But these are all kind of going ping-ponging back and forth about what's going on in the community, well, what's going on campus. And don't forget, universities are based on medieval approaches to life. So it's incredible what we got done. And a lot of people today would find it ridiculous how many years it took. But it took years pushing from the outside and the inside to get this stuff done. But I will say that there were many things going on. There would be little blips going on occasionally. Certainly there's some reports of closeted faculty and staff from way back in the early 1900s, when CU was still a baby, that just who knows what was really going on at all. There's a report of an RA that got caught and kicked out of being an RA, but not CU, as long as she went to psychiatry and got a okay. Thank goodness that psychiatry person had already understood that there's nothing wrong with being LGBTQ. So she was fine, went on and graduated, and I think did live in with her partner. So hey, there's a success story right away. And that Gay Lesbian Liberation Front office moved around within the UMC because it got rocks to the window, graffiti, so they moved into the basement. And it wasn't just men with the GLF. It was also women. That's all there was. So that's what happened as well. And they got bigger and bigger space in the basement, so that was kind of nice as well. But at Amendment 2 happening on our campus, we had a famous Coach McCartney. And that was a galvanizing lightning rod as well for us. We had Campus Lambda for faculty and eventually staff were invited to a secret off-campus once a month or so.
We let the grad students come to a
Slowly, right? It trickles down. This is a hierarchical institution, so, but it was all secret because nobody was protected at that point. So over sitting in the Counseling Center, some of us thought, well, we don't have any kind of resource center in the city. We don't have anything on campus. So we'll do the bizarrely named Lesbi Gay Noon Hour series. And we started just doing little panels in the UMC, and then it grew to doing a welcome and some of the things that are done by the center now, which has gone through, I don't know how many name changes, but now it's called the Pride Center. Those kinds of things changed over time, and they weren't permitted for a long, long time. So, for example, one of the things that was done was some day-long symposia. This is in the 90s. This is all around the Amendment 2 time, where faculty and staff like Virginia and John Wilkin and Meg Moretz and a number of others of us on campus put together bringing people in from off campus to help us move forward and understanding really what's going on out there in the queer world. So the interesting part was the CU president was President Judith Albino, which of course having the CU president as a female was almost unheard of, and having a chancellor we once had for Mary Frances Berry, our one and only female and one and only African-American president. But Judith Albino agreed. This is about strategizing and bringing people to the table to say, hey, we're important. This symposium is important. We're bringing in somebody from out of state, another faculty member. We're teaching students, faculty, staff, open to community. So the president, that's over the whole CU system, not just CU Boulder, came in and was going to introduce Ellen Barabee. And she wore a bulletproof vest underneath her clothes. And in Old Main, the curtains were all pulled back, so there was no kind of like soft look behind, so that security could see that there was nobody back there that was going to jump out or shoot her. So that's the sense of what was going on around the Amendment 2 time. The other thing is that President Albino had said that there would be no politicking around this Amendment 2, and that she was not going to have anybody really speaking out about this stuff. So here you had football coach Bill McCartney. Underneath, he was wearing his CU insignia. He was under the banner at the CU podium and saying homosexuality was an abomination unto God Almighty. So in defiance of her order, he was out there and he got away with it. He was on the board of Colorado for Family Values, of course. And he was the winningest coach. Recently passed, and you heard how he ascended into sainthood. I did not write a mean letter to the editor. I just said that was not good karma for speaking ill of the dead. But all right, but that I can. So all of this garbage roiling around on campus and in the community and in the state led to Chancellor Corbridge. So Chancellor is over just the CU Boulder system to say, well, let's do a little study of how things are for gays and lesbians on campus. Maybe it won't be so bad. So he, of course, dutifully, as is done everywhere in higher education, appointed a committee, a temporary task force to study the issue. So what did we find out? Oh, things were not great for us. So that task force, who was led by Jean Nickel, who was the dean of the law school at the time and a terrific ally to us, I think more than he ever had planned on being, probably in his entire life, but was chairing that task force, and I was lucky enough to be appointed to it. And we came up with 10 recommendations to say, here are some things that would be changing in the system that would make things better for us. And so, thank you, Chancellor Corbridge, who was had quite a rep himself, actually, for liking women as well as us. But he did have some good points here, and he went and established a permanent standing committee, which still is in operation today, and charged them, which is amazing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen a task force or a committee appointed at this campus, and it went on the shelf after the report came back. That he made a standing committee to say, we will implement all of it, was, I hadn't heard that. And I was at CU for about 27 years, so that was pretty novel for me. So the person who was appointed to be in charge of it was my dear friend, Jo Arnold, who I didn't really know that well. And so she had said to me, you're getting a letter from the chancellor, you're going to be appointed, and I'm going to lead it. And I said, I'm not going to do it. And that was very shocking to her. As I said, Jean was able to run the task force as an ally. You cannot lead from the closet. You cannot. So we went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth on an archaic tractor kind of email. Some of you probably don't even remember it. Remember the little dots on the papers with print out? The little tractor going back and forth. There were probably reams of paper we used, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And finally, she said, okay, but you gotta give me time. I gotta come back. I gotta talk to my son and granddaughters. And I said, you think they don't know? Okay, maybe your granddaughters don't. I don't know. So she talked to them, agreed, and I said, and I have the perfect thing for you. We're going to have a Lesbian Gay Noon Hour series, and it's going to be a coming out for faculty. And you can be on it. And she was on the front page, the top half of the fold, which is the best place to be. Wow. That crazy Lesbian Gay Noon Hour series with the coming out panel with faculty from CU made the front page of the paper. That's what things were like back then. It was really crazy.
Wow.
So some of the things that we got accomplished from that standing committee of implementing and some of the recommendations were things that are to be implemented. They weren't events. They were like, let's create this and make it stick. So the LGBT certificate program, so you had gay studies starting there. Took a couple of years to get that off the ground, but it happened. We had domestic partner benefits. Remember domestic partners? Well, this is like way back, right? Well, there wasn't a way to do it. The regents were saying no. So at the time, Sam Magris was the Wurdenberg director. So he went around. This is about knowing people that know who the right people are. He went to the insurance provider and said, hey, what if we just offer a little side option where the students could actually add in a domestic partner if they wanted? So it wouldn't be on the top line about the regents probably never notice. He was able to get it done. So the students were the first ones to get domestic partner insurance benefits, which was incredible. And that's a great example of going around your obstacle. So other little things happened, like married student housing got changed to family housing. And actually it was permitted to have same-sex couples, which hadn't been true before. We had the creation of the LGBT, at that time, No T Resource Center. And I remember that was my task to just go look into it. And so I thought, this isn't going to be that hard. There aren't that many in CU or at the United States at that point. So I just looked up everything I could find and then did the old cut and paste and slapped together a resource center, and then was able to talk to Corbridge and get it approved. And we were able to then, it was hilarious. We went to, this is not funny, but this is how it turned out, is that Corbridge said, let's give $60,000 to it, which doesn't sound like that much, but it was started up. And the Regents, even today, the Regents are like, wait. What happened is that Corbridge announced in a meeting that he was going to fund it to $60,000. And next what happened is that they called a private executive session. And then when they came out of the session, Corbridge withdrew that proposal. So that left us with, okay, go for it. Have a bake sale. So thanks to wonderful fundraising of the committee, as well as students, faculty, and staff, and community members, we pulled it together and launched. And it was hilarious. I was the first coordinator, interim coordinator, just to hire this darling young gay man named Larry, who we put in a closet in the counseling center. There is no space on campus. If you've ever worked at CU, you know that space is worth dying for. So all we could find, there's no room in the inn, was this little alcove at the end of the council center at the time, which was in a boys' dorm formerly.
Oh.
And it had a little wooden sliding door that would open, and that's those little panels, not the cool barn sliding door. And the journalism school, Steve Jones gave us a desk and chair, and Darcy Cease, who was the director, gave us a phone and a computer and a chair, filing cabinet, and away we went. And I can tell you that Larry recruited some really cool kids to start coming to the center. So that happened next. And then the faculty and staff remained unprotected. So there was no, as Susie was saying, we had to hit the 2000s to 2001 or 2002 to actually get non-discrimination at the university. So all the people who went to the Regents to say, we need this anti-discrimination clause, we need domestic partner benefits, were all risking their job at CU unless they were tenured faculty, although now that wouldn't even be it anymore. So they were not allowed. So we went to the Board of Regents a number of times. We worked with administration over and over, and they kept saying politically it's not a good time. But it's never a good time. Never a good time, I learned. And so finally, we got non-discrimination, and then we got our domestic partner benefits for faculty and staff, except not classified staff, which is a particular kind of staff that works for the state instead of the university. And it's hard to explain what that encompasses, but that was a state decision. So we had to wait several more years for the state to agree that they could have domestic partner benefits. So you can see that over a decade is what it took to get all of this pushing and shoving and committee work and lobbying regents and talking to administrators, because to get on to talk to the regents or even get to get on the agenda. It all takes about the handshakes behind closed doors of being able to push and push and push to get this thing done. It took forever to do that.
Here, can I throw in?
Yeah.
Throw in a story. We got sexual orientation added to the non-discrimination policy at Boulder Valley Schools. And I just want to tell you a quick little story about how that happened, because I think it happened really pretty early on and kind of by accident, like going around. Candy Thompson and I were charged with overseeing the health curriculum, health department of the school district, as well as running the safe and drug-free schools. And so we decided, let's revise the health curriculum and let's have sexual orientation be part of what they discuss in health class. And let's have, safe sex and all of that, use of condoms and everything taught to the high school kids. And so we revised the health curriculum and pulled together a little committee, and we had to take it to the school board 3 different times to get it approved. And we went to see Superintendent Dean Damon, who was really supportive. Yeah, and we didn't know about his private life at the time, but he was very supportive. So we went on our first meeting and just gave them the material and said, here's the new health curriculum, and they all nodded and said, that looks good. They highlighted it. And then, we went to the next meeting and we made a presentation about the new health curriculum, and that went over really well. And then for the last meeting, Family Values got word that this was happening. And so they sent out word to other church people and passed out flyers to them to come to this board meeting and protest. You were there, Gene Hodges, and their talking points were to get up and say, we don't have anything against gay people and we want them to have their rights, but we don't want this taught in the health curriculum. So this board meeting turned into chaos. Did you bring the kids, the Oasis kids? Somebody brought a bunch of Oasis kids to the meeting. And so they joined in the back of the meeting and they heard all this going on. And one of the young boys just started flaunting down the aisle going, well, I'm gay. And I didn't do a very good imitation, but he would have flaunted. And someone else who was one of the church people there said, oh my God, there are gay people here. And it really turned to chaos. They called campus security. There was one of the church guys, was this kind of muscular guy, who started heading for the young boy who had flaunted his gayness. And I saw this happening, and so I jumped in between the guy and the boy, and I just said, you need to leave right now. And luckily, he turned around and left. I think he heard the sirens of the police coming, but which guy? The gay guy. I know the muscular guy. He left. So the board meeting was put on hold, and the board went behind the doors and had a closed door session that Candy and I were invited into. And who was the head of the school board?
It was what's the name? It was
With the big red hair, and she was yeah.
Stephanie.
Stephanie Holt. And she was very conservative. Very, very conservative. And she said, there's no way we're going to pass this health curriculum, but what do you all want? And Candy and I kind of looked at each other and we said, well, we want to be included in the anti-discrimination policy. So she sat down and wrote it out, and she said because all these people said they want you to have your rights. They just didn't want it in the health curriculum. So we came back out into that meeting, and this was 97. They passed sexual orientation as part of the anti-discrimination policy.
That's right. Who says K-12 is more conservative than the university? 4 years ahead of us.
No, but especially right now.
Anyway, there were many more things that happened that were recommended. LGBTQ Alumni Association got established thanks to the brilliant thinking of Joanne Arnold. That we were able to do fundraising for a scholarship, and she and I worked our butts off and got that thing endowed so that during COVID, when we weren't allowed to ever meet and throw our little Christmas or holiday party or welcome back party or whatever, that we raised money that way for the scholarship. And because of her brilliant thinking on the endowment, we're the only chapter that has an endowment, actually. And so we are able to get through the hard times like COVID when we couldn't have any events at all. And we still give out scholarships, which is managed by the university. So we have a great opportunity to keep encouraging undergraduates and graduates to keep working even if they don't have the money to get through CU. There was a floor established in the residence hall so you could be out on your floor. They made gender neutral bathrooms there. That was another just separate tug of war. It's like, you want to have a queer floor, but you don't want to have, you want the separate male female bathrooms. Like, wait, let's struggle through this. Let's think this through. So that took more time as well. And so there's some gender neutral bathrooms sprinkled around. There's still not that many, but there's more than there were. So a lot of things changed very slowly. But the reason I want to point this out to you is that with our government getting dismantled, I think it's important to think about what it's going to take to rebuild it, and that one march is not going to do it.
Right.
A lot of marches are going to do it, and a lot of pushing and shoving from the inside and the outside for what's going to be important. And I want to point out that all these things were led by LGBTQ faculty, staff, and students on our campus. Our allies were there by our sides. They were very responsive. Some of them were too scared and pushed back against us, but helped us maybe quietly or behind the doors. There was a lot of things that happened, but there are just so many people in this audience and that have passed away in the queer community that made this all happen. It's easy for us to idealize our allies, but it's really important to know how much at CU it really was about the queer community getting all this done, and most of them without any notion of whether they were going to be fired or not, because almost all of this happened way before anti-discrimination went down. And so bravo to everybody who did that. Very important. Got to have your allies. And bravo to you for all that work.
I think even.
Well, I want to steer towards art and creating art, and so give you a chance to have the floor for a while and talk to us about where that word activism does and doesn't sort of fit for you.
Back.
Yeah, I mean, really, ever since high school, I felt I was always trying to be an activist. And I just, I would try to join things and do things, and things just never fit. It just never could get traction. And I really I loved ensemble music. I loved ensemble sound. And I just thought, okay, I'm doing this, and I hope it'll help somebody, because I'd like to be helpful. But I could never find a path doing guerrilla theater or being part of institutional change. I really needed to have everything I was doing make sense to me. I really needed to be able to wrap my arms around it. So I've just worked very small scale, really, just very specifically. I was pleased to be included in this panel because, I thought, well, I'm glad they're considering me an activist. Great. And I wonder how many people here feel chorusing is an activism in the same way. And it is in really interesting and different and crucial ways. And so I thank Jean Hodges for recommending me for the panel. I appreciate being seen by her in that way. And I'll just a little bit of history and then just some unpacking of what I think goes on in these choruses that's just beyond beautiful. I think choruses are, one of the most beautiful things in the world. They're just paragons of kind of authenticity, sincerity, connection, community. I always felt like, the conflation of medium and message, choruses, speaking the messages of the LGBTQ world was just a brilliant, the medium was the message, really. I'm kind of smushing together while I'm talking, lesbian, LGBTQ, women's, feminist. So there's differentiating to do, but the women's choruses, I think, as a lot of women's activism, lesbian activism, it's not so specific. I directed the Denver Gay Men's Chorus for 6 years, which was really interesting and fun and really a privilege. And I just, it really feels different. 99.9% of the guys in the Denver Gay Men's Chorus were gay. And the women's choruses, mine, Sound Circle, and Resonance, and around the country, they're very mixed. They and by intention, I think I'll make a generalization that could be a topic for discussion, but I just think it's not as meaningful to women. I don't think it's meaningful to lesbians to be exclusively lesbian. I know it wasn't interesting to me so much. I really wanted to have choruses that were wide ranging. So, but it did make it hard to talk about the message in the same way. And it was tough. With the gay men, you could just target the messaging so effectively, and it was gay. And it was just a little hard to do that, It was like, well, but it's lesbian, but it's feminist, but it's women's, but it's interesting. So good topic for unpacking some more. Also, I'll just acknowledge I'm not addressing diversity at all. These choruses are largely white, largely middle class. They just are. There's been 8 trillion conversations and projects and intentions about diversifying, met with some success and not so much. So I'll just acknowledge that. And there are 2 books that I have been digging into this week just to trip down memory lane. And one of them is by Rita Kisson, who lives in Fort Collins now, but was in Maine when she was doing this. She wrote a history, which we did a concert with her a few years ago. Strong Voices, History of the Women's Choral Movement. And she just felt like the stories need to get told or they'd get lost. And it's really a nice book. Just some context around choruses and women's movement, women's music community preceding the choruses, and then just really good history. She just got it down. She did 1 million interviews for many years, and this is really a labor of love. And then this other book was written by Julia Balen, and it's called A Queerly Joyful Noise, Choral Musicking for Social Justice. And she was also just was around for years. I would see her at every conference and festival for a long time and had a lot of conversations with her. And she was coming from, she was a college teacher. It's like a bit academic, but I can understand it. It's not too academic, but it's just incredibly insightful and just sort of unpacking really the profundity of what was going on in these choruses and the way in which they were contributing in activist ways. So just briefly, I think it's accurate to say that these women's choruses came out of the women's music movement, the soloists and the early bands like Fanny and the Chicago Women's Liberation Rock Band. There's a great documentary that came out not long ago, Radical Harmonies. That's just if you are nostalgic for those times, it would really do your heart a lot of good. It's an excellent documentary. But there's just epic stories. I mean, just lives so dramatically shaped and saved, I think people would say, by those early concerts and festivals, like people crying in the bathroom at a Chris Williamson concert because they were so overcome by simply the experience of being there in that space. And I think, I've heard so many stories from friends of mine about Michigan, going to the festival, just being transformative, kind of like that was real life. And then they came back for the rest of the 51 weeks of the year until they could get back there. So Holly Near was invited. We invited Holly Near in like 2005 to come sing with Resonance. residence, nicely mixed chorus, as I said. Plenty of straight women, plenty of awesome straight women, and plenty of lesbians. And so it occurred to me that there were people that might not know who she was, and I asked. And a third of the people in the chorus had never heard of Eileen Ear, and a third of them had certainly heard of her, and then a third of them would say their lives had been dramatically transformed by her. And so I really wanted people to understand who she was when she was coming. And so a whole lot of the singers wrote up little testimonials, and we just kind of did a collection to share with each other. And just stories about, she's come the soundtrack to people's coming out, just bolstering people when they were dealing with, massive homophobia in their small college town coming out. So the women's and feminist choruses, Anna Cruces and Kathy Roma are kind of famously the first. I don't know if they were exactly the first. There were some others around the country as well, but they started merging in the mid-'70s. Also, I want to do a shout out to Maven Productions and Nona. Anybody know what the first concert was?
Policy was Chris Williamson.
Yes, Chris Williamson in 1978. Yeah, and then she just produced dozens and dozens of concerts. And then just locally, also culturally speaking, Vox Feminista, I think started in 1989. I think maybe we'll get Hope to say a little bit later. And then Goddess Theater also, 1990. So choruses have long played a role in social change. I mean, there are labor choruses, there were a lot of immigrant choruses in the early part of this century. And, we all know the civil rights movement was kind of a shining beacon of what collective singing can do for a social movement. Just Bernice Johnson Reagan would speak very eloquently about, the way that the singing just would kind of inject backbone into people, and they just collectively would have the courage to do what they never dreamed they could do. I'll just mention also that, Sweet Honey, I think, was really one of the, they were hugely influential to the women's choruses. I mean, just repertoire and message and the idea of communicating a message through song. The way that I have talked about what these choruses are doing, and just for people that don't know, Sound Circle, I started in 1994 as a smaller group, like a 20-ish size group, with the same values essentially as the other choruses in the movement. And then I just, it was a small group, so people kept auditioning that I wasn't able to take, and I just thought, I'm going to start a larger chorus too. And it was interesting because in the GALA movement, Gay and Lesbian Association of Choruses, and then there's also the Sister Singers Network of Lesbian Feminist Choruses. A lot of the larger women's choruses are directed by men. The women kind of gravitated toward these, sort of scrappy, consensus-y, sort of raggedy choruses. And some, like Turtle, Dallas Women's Chorus, Tim Seelig, this were sort of these big operations, somewhat military, kind of in the model of the big men's choruses. And so it really just felt like I'd like to hear that big woman sound with the values and the tone that I would bring to it, And so I just felt like there were people here that were looking for that, and I just could hear it in my ear. And so it was awesome. So the way that I talk about these things is kind of, there's sort of a triangle of pillars. One of them is just community. So all choruses are fantastic at creating community. I mean, just brilliant. You just get people together, joined in this kind of common pursuit of this, creating this beautiful sound who might never otherwise cross paths. But I think because the need was so intense that in the LGBTQ choral world, there was the need sort of heightened the awareness and intensified the quality of community. I think I will say that's true, I think. Relevancy of texts, choruses are just famous for singing whatever, singing a lot of Christian music, like religious music, that whether they believe it or not, whether they've translated the words or not, and one of the things that's so important in this choral world is we're singing words that make sense. We're singing words that speak of our lives, and it's so much about authenticity and authentic voice. And, to me, it's such a responsibility picking words, these words are coming out of all these people's mouths for months, I really have to make sure they're words that are empowering and meaningful and relevant. And then I would say the healing power of musical ensemble is just a huge pillar. And it was interesting. I hadn't really thought about it. And over the years with Sound Circle, audience members were coming up to me. I just started noticing that I was getting this reflected back to me, that people were commenting on, the healing nature of the performance. And it just kind of dawned on me, oh, that's what we're doing. And then I just understood it more and more. And there's so many stories of individual singers that, have spoken to me about ways that they have been healed, in so many ways, sometimes musically and emotionally in so many ways. So I think about those three things: community and relevance of text and healing power. What I would say is choruses provide, it's an activism kind of internally for the singers. Voice, authenticity, sanity, courage, safe space, visibility, pride, community, affirmation, hope, healing, creativity, play, fun, my favorite phrase, existential ease.
Yes.
Just joy, ecstatic experience, just intense pleasure, and those things are just so important. I mean, just being able to walk in a room and feel comfortable in your own skin, it's profound. And then, I tried over the years to how to describe it, and I came up with the term soul nourishment. And I like that term a lot. I use it quite a bit, and people seem to find it meaningful. Another thing that I think is really important is that these courses are supporting the individuals in their own paths of activism. So right now, for example, in residence, I mean, I'm trying to be good about not letting us talk about politics too much at rehearsal, because it's a downer and we really have to practice. But we have a talk list and people connect, and there's just a real, I would say, mutual support of a lot of really good activism by the individuals. And then I would say that there's an activism in what we offer to the community, all of the things that we offer to the singers. Just a gathering space, visibility. It's a lot about affirming. It's a lot about joy, and it's about normalizing. In the gay choral movement, LGBTQ choral movement, we talk about messages being carried on song, go deeper into the heart than spoken word. We're changing hearts and minds, changing feelings within the community as well as outside. It was a line we liked a lot. Gay choruses save lives. Every time a gay chorus sings, a life is saved. That was Dennis Coleman, Seattle Men's Chorus. Loved to say that. Parents worried that their queer kid was going to have a very hard life would come to a concert and see them just embraced in community on stage, and they just feel like, okay, it's going to be okay. I mean, really big, really, really big. It's also important to me just to feel like we're part of kind of a fabric of community. So one thing I say about us, is part of our mission is singing in support of the organizations and individuals in the community that are creating social change. I'm definitely a preacher to the choir. I'm a big fan of preaching to the choir. I'm kind of doing that right now since you're in the choir. It's about affirmation, and that's something that the choruses can really, really offer. It's also really meaningful to me to be part of a national network. So there's GALA Choruses it's the art service organization for the Gay and Lesbian Association of Choruses, as it was originally called. And the sisters, and that's that organization went, through its growing pains of, very grassroots. We need an executive director. For a while, they needed an office in Washington, which they got over. Just a lot of sort of, more of a classic board. Yeah, constant argument about governance board versus working board, all those kind of things, And then the Sister Singers Network is just delightfully, I wouldn't say raggedy, but, grassrootsy, charming, informal. It's, they don't have a board and a hierarchy. They have spokes on a wheel, and it works really well, And the Gala Festival every 4 years is about 7,000 people, probably about 6,000, and maybe I'll say 6,300 are men, and maybe 700 are women. It's huge. And then the Sister Singers Network festivals are maybe 600 people, and they're just great. You can talk to anybody there, and anybody that's there could be somebody that would be singing next to you in your own chorus. There's really just an awesome sense of being something bigger and understanding that, there's this network around the country. And as I like to tell the singers, we didn't invent ourselves. We wouldn't be ourselves without inspiration and, kind of collegial relationships, a lot of repertoire sharing, programming, how to run a chorus, running things by your fellow directors. It's really meaningful. As I said, these choruses are not exclusively lesbian for the most part. And, there's a way to think about the way that music is performed in a community, maybe reflects the values in the community. There's a guy, Christopher Small, that wrote about musicking, and he's quite well known. He contrasted a Western symphonic orchestra concert and audience with, tribe in Africa banging on drums together, and just what values are inherent in each of these things, And so there's a way of thinking about these choruses, which is like, okay, let's create the society we want to live in these choruses. And so for me, that's, I really don't want it to be exclusively lesbian, but I don't want to be in a chorus that has a lot of lesbians, but we don't talk about it. And there are choruses like that. So there's this fairly humorous lesbian talk that I give every year in residence. And, the short version is there's a lot of lesbians in the chorus. And then that's really what people, we just need to say that. And then it's, but this impacts our culture, our messages, our humor, a lot of things about us. Also, it's really important to me to say everyone's here as themselves. It's not lesbians and their straight allies. The people who are not lesbian get to be here as themselves. We're all allies for each other. But sometimes people want to put that framing on it, of lesbians and their allies. And it's like, of course they're allies, but we're all allies and they're also just themselves. One thing I say is, if you'd be unhappy if somebody mistook you for a lesbian, then this is probably not the right chorus for you. I think that's pretty, that's pretty good. And the reason it occurred to me to say that was because there was this hilarious thing that happened once. A lot of people know Wendy Rockman, I think. She sang in Sound Circle for a long time. And, she was married to Kenneth forever. And they had Max, and, and she had a friend who knew her well. Like, who she was married to Kenneth. And she came to a Sound Circle concert, and Wendy was singing. She said, Wendy, I didn't know you were a lesbian. And it was like, I don't know, it was one drop of blood or something like that. It just felt like she was, she couldn't compute. So in Julia's book, this choral musicking for social justice, she really just starts unpacking sort of the emotional project of things. And she talks about, first of all, she talks about joy. And the mission of Sound Circle always was, to experience the joy of singing together and share that joy with our audiences. And, I thought forever and ever and ever about the mission when I was starting it. Kept drilling it down. There's a lot of boilerplate kind of mission stuff you can say, but it's like, it's not really that. I finally got to this. It's just about joy. And that really worked. I mean, ever since, I just could make every decision based on that mission statement, So just, she talks a lot about Audre Lorde and erotics and that kind of thinking about things. And it's not just community. It's deep, like soul, existential level, profound joy, ecstasy, spirituality, pleasure. It's really, really big. It's a lot about mental health, and it's a lot about emotional life. And she talks about, she has a chapter called Singing as Counter-Storying Practice. So it's that kind of book. And basically, social change is about changing laws, changing policies, but it's also about changing stories, and it's about, changing narratives. And if there's a kind of a dominant narrative that doesn't recognize you, then it's very damaging. And so one thing that the choruses do is create space for people to write the stories that where they see themselves. It's really important. There was a singer that came just a few years ago to residence, and she told me recently that she said when she walked in the door, she just felt like space to be myself. And it's like from that moment, she just went on this major trajectory of personal growth, and just because there was this sort of, space where she felt safe to unpack that out of her own psyche, kind of. So I'm going to just finish with a little passage from Julia's book that I like a lot, which is, not only does group songmaking require regular practice to make it beautiful, but it requires an intimate attention to each other simultaneously as individuals and as a group. At their best, singers listen to both themselves and each other's every breath, tone, and silence for cues with an attentiveness that few of us ever receive outside of the most intimate of relationships.
I can keep asking questions, but if any of you are dying to ask one, you're welcome to jump up. Yeah.
This is the first. I just want to say thank you, and this has been such a wonderful. There's so many ways to build community, and I just want to talk really briefly about the one I had when I first came to Boulder. I joined a group called TLC, Lesbian Connection. I don't know if it's been mentioned.
As not yet.
Yeah, so a lot of folks here were either involved or, hadn't just know people who were. It was a group that met once a month. For a while, it was in the Colonia Clubhouse, and I think the depot, and then it went somewhere else that was actually wheelchair accessible. But we had movies, speakers. I'm sure some people here spoke. We brought in people. I had the honor of flying in Alison Bechtel before she was really well. This is the point where she's like, "Yeah, I can sleep in your bedroom and I'll sleep on the couch." I mean, it was that level of grassroots. You were talking about Sue. So I just want to give a shout out to some of the people who started that organization. And I know it was a bit of a offspring because there was a concern on campus of professors socializing, for good reason, socializing with their students, which could get really messy. And so I think it became, somehow it's related to that. Somebody may know more of the history, but that was really wonderful for me. And that's how I also met book room that's been, I think, hitting 37 years. Ann Boyd and Suzanne Kincaid, who did work out at the university through, Suzanne did for years, had to be closeted. Yeah, still going strong. And so I guess just want to.
It was also a joyous potluck.
Yeah, of course. Of course. It was a monthly potluck too. Oh my gosh, now I've forgotten.
And Lesbian News choruses. Dance. And the New Year's Eve.
Oh yes, I meant to say that. So I helped start the first one. We bunch the broker in. So it was you. We go together, and they said no. You can't come here. And
It's the Holiday Inn.
No, it was but it switched.
No, the one that turned us down.
That was the hardest challenge.
It was a book.
In any case, then we passed along. They couldn't say no. So it was, and it was a way again for people to come together and celebrate. But I also am a little bit concerned about how many gaps and memories of like, oh, it was this place, it was that place. So I'm so glad for people who are writing things down. I need to talk to you about donating things to this museum because I have all this old stuff that I'm starting to let go of. And does somebody want this photocopied?
Yeah, don't get rid of, don't recycle those photocopies. Yeah. Glenda Russell does have an amazing archive and is actively collecting, and so run by her if it's all right to donate to us. But yeah, we don't want those things lost to time, certainly. And I'm glad you brought up TLC. Karen, was it you that as we were sitting down said this is basically a TLC reunion here? So thank you. And would you share your name?
Ellen Orleans.
Thank you.
So who was a member of TLC at some point?
Amazing.
Yes, in the book. This queers go through.
Can we ask her to talk?
Can we ask to say a little about Vox Feminist?
Yeah. Do you want a mic?
Oh, sure. I don't know.
Do it so the camera picks
A picture.
Yeah, go on up.
Okay, get us done.
Oh.
You.
It's blue.
Yes, can I lead in? Sure. So, oh, that was so fun. Thank you. Thank you. It is like a reunion here. So Vox Feminista started as Vox Femina in, I think, 1992.
1989.
No,
So I saw.
89.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, 1989 feels like last week to me. Anyway, there was a women's chorus called Vox Femina that came 10 years later and wanted us to not use their name. So we changed it to Vox Feminista because we thought that sounded more radical. We called it Radical Feminist Theater. Our motto was to comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And we did shows for 24 years, up and down with our families. And it was really fun. It was really fun.
What were some of your titles, for example?
Oh, gosh, Levi would know.
Garla Girls Wreak Revenge.
Martin Luther King, yes.
Plop Goes the Patriarchy, White Lies.
White lies, and we did white noise. What we would do is we would pick a subject, and then we would find the book that was like the most radical and marvelous about that subject. We'd all read the book, and then we would write a show about what was happening. So we did a show on water, and we did a show on money. We did a show on war. We did 2 shows on white privilege. We did shows on being queer in the world. And yeah, we would do a show. We would do maybe 10 performances of that show. And then that would take 6 months to write the show, rehearse the show, perform the show. We would do 5 weekends. And then we would do it all over again. So we would do 2 shows a year like that for 20 years. For the first 4 years, it wasn't like that. So yeah.
Archive of them?
There ought to be.
Yes.
I
Yes.
think my house might be an archive of them. I live with the producer, Joy Boston, and she keeps everything. And Levi keeps it all in their head because...
Yes. We recently had everything digitized.
Right. Thank you. All of it, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and
YouTube?
what's that?
And it's that up to you.
Sure.
Sure.
It hasn't been put, we're really anti-tech in a way that I think Sue understands. So yeah, it's not my thing, but I'm sure somebody could kick it up
I can
to YouTube.
do that.
Anyway, we really tried to change the culture. We did a lot of actions that we videoed, and then we would show them at the show. So when the war started, the last war, when Bush was president, we would shave our heads. We shaved our heads in protest, and then at every show, we came out with our heads shaved and said, who wants to have their head shaved after the show? And 20 women, 30 women come up. It was so awesome. And we videoed all that. And then we made a video of all those women getting their heads shaved. We went to focus on the family. Fuck us and our families. And we dressed as church ladies and we infiltrated. And those were the days Joy had a camera that was like this big, a video camera, and she somehow got it in, and we looked amazing. Like we really were unrecognizable, and we did all kinds of shit there. Yeah.
So we did a lot, and it was great. And yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody for coming. We actually stopped because we were exhausted and old, and like I'm going to be 70, and it's hard for me to memorize big things. Like, yeah, I would do 20 minutes of stand-up comedy, and I can't really do that anymore. So we wrapped it up. 20 years, that was great. And then 5 years after that, Trump got elected. And that night, Levi called, Sarah called, like 5 of us just spontaneously called each other and said, we got to do another show. And so we did.
Who did a show?
That was fun. Anyway, thanks everybody for being a mama and staying strong.
Thank you.
I'd like to know if I accurately remember aliens emerging from a vagina about this size at the Mercury Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I saw a hand.
And you were like 10.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
This really is just it's the vitamins being here. I'd love to hear more about the Boulder. Was it the Boulder Network, Boulder Lesbian Network? Because I think the first time I met Louise Knapp, she was stapling a notice of a gathering, probably at the United's campus ministries building in her coffee house. Yeah, we're organizing. Yeah, that was the Boulder Lesbian Network, and that was how I found community in Boulder in 1979 or something.
Yeah. That kind of preceded the lesbian connection.
Yeah,
Kind of
mother.
Yeah, it was the mother of the lesbian. Yeah, it was very brief. Started in 1978. A bunch of us, we kind of knew each other, or friends of friends of friends, got together and for a day-long meeting to talk about how can we create some lesbian community. And what came out of that was the Boulder Lesbian Network, ELN. And we decided we wanted to do monthly coffee houses, monthly meetings, and monthly potlucks, I think. I can't remember. Potlucks, it's all this pops and holy. And that lasted for 3 years. I was in charge of the coffee houses and recruiting talent, and sometimes they wouldn't show up, and then I would get up with my guitar and sing. They were just wonderful, and people, we would put, back then, no internet, so we would put flyers on the telephone poles to advertise the coffee houses. And so we would get women coming to these coffee houses who, housewives who were like, gee, maybe I'm a lesbian. I mean, it was pretty incredible. And my one anecdote that I remember the most about that was I used to, when I would be that entertainment, I would get up and I would have my guitar and I would sing like Buffy Sainte-Marie and the Buffalo's Goddess, just kind of sing, and try and get people to care about singing. And people would come up to me and say, it's really nice that you're doing all this singing and everything, but maybe you could maybe a little shorter, and maybe we could have time to socialize, because that's really what we're here for. So, but it was, we had these wonderful coffee houses. People started to burn out a little bit. We had a phone tree. We actually picketed at the stores, using the phone tree. We'd call everybody, okay, there's a picket tonight at Isadora's, and things like that. So it had an element of activism, but it was also very much a social group. And but there was some burnout, and then I had some health issues, and it didn't last very long. It closed, and it ended in 1980, and then TLC arose from the ashes.
Just a quick question about how many people were involved. How many women were involved at that point, do you think?
Hundreds? Not hundreds, no. Maybe the initial meeting that we had, there might have been 70 or 80 people there. And
and people, there was a lot of energy at the time, and people said, okay, I'll volunteer to do the phone tree, and I'll volunteer to do the newsletter. And we have like 3 years, I have 3 years of newsletters at home that talking about all kinds of stuff that was going on in the lesbian community in Boulder in general. So, but there was some burnout after a while. I think that, people just moved on.
But then TLC happened.
And then TLC happened, yeah. And TLC was had a little different focus, a lot of professional women networking kind of things and potlucks and but yeah, it didn't have the flavor of activism. I remember going to a TLC potluck at the depot once and standing up to make an announcement about how I don't know if it was Focus on the Family. Some organization was trying to rescind abortion rights, and I was trying to impress on the women there about, they're coming after abortion, they're going to come after us. And everybody just kind of was like, oh, okay, it's, whatever. And it was a little bit disheartening to me because there wasn't quite the passion that I was looking for. But it was also just a really great place to meet other people and socialize. And that, yeah.
Yep. So I was joking. Well, I'm just remembering something. This goes back to CU, sort of. In the 90s, I'm thinking maybe late 90s. There was different churches up there that were for the campus, but they were really their own churches. Well, there was this incredible woman named the Reverend Leanne Bryce, and her wife before legality, the Reverend Sarah D. Smith, Esquire. So she had a shitload of degrees. She was a lawyer and a preacher, and she was from Kentucky, and you just didn't mess with these two women. I mean, they were amazing. Leanne was from Texas, Fort Worth, and her partner was from Kentucky, and they were these bulwarks of these lesbian preachers. And Leanne was hired by one of the churches that was like the campus church up on campus. But, then all of a sudden they found out that she was a lesbian. And so they fired her. Mm. Well, they gave her an option to stop living with Sarah. Stop sleeping with her or something. And she's like, no. But anyway, I'm just wanted to pull that in because you can go online and just type in Reverend Leanne Bryce, who now is the minister down at the Colorado Springs, Belly of the Beast, UCC down there. They're out. Lesbian, and she got that gig just before the Q shooting. But I mean, she probably wore a bulletproof vest under her thing to preach. I mean, I don't really know our governor did and probably still does. But anyway, you should just really look up Reverend Lee, separate word, Ann Bryce, Bryce, because she sued, or she attempted to sue at the church, the university. I don't know. It's all mushed together.
Like the municipal amendment, the protection to the Boulder, and Glenda, you're nodding your head. What was it? Because we thought she'd be elected because we had a municipal ordinance.
Well, but it was with the church.
But it was with the church, so it fell apart.
Can do whatever they want. And state employees were not necessarily covered. That's what I mean. So from the local ordinance. But yeah, so she lost her case, but it was dragged out and out and out, and it was terribly painful for her. And she went on to be the choir leader of Harmony, a Colorado Parade, which was a mixed, meaning lesbians and gay men, and a few tokens by people make a choir that then we represent Denver. And it was, she was just very talented in that. She was really beaten down by that lawsuit, and eventually, they looked away and they broke up or whatnot. But just look it up, because there's reams and reams and reams of
of that case online that just is really quite shattering if you live in the unreal world. But or like you and like
Yeah, just a few more things that I wanted to say. Sue, thank you for all of your words, and I could really relate. Because with Dancing Divas, we feel all of the same things through the art of dance rather than the art of singing and music. And it's always been our mission to create community that above dance. We got together because we're all out of women that wanted a dance space, but our mission has always been creating community. And I think it's core. It's like the roots of the aspen forest. We're all interconnected. We're all interrelated, and the roots provide that connection and the nourishment for the other things to happen. People need community. I remember in high school, I felt like I was the only person who was queer, and I didn't understand it. And it took a while to figure out, there are other people like me in the world. We still need that. We need the sense of belonging. We need the sense of connection and of being together, whether it's through music or through dance or, through theater or whatever connections we have. It's really important.
And didn't you say you were inspired? Like you were inspired to do Dancing Divas here because of the quality of community in the Olivia Cruises.
Yes. So I've really had the privilege of working for Olivia Travel for 30 years. How many of you know about Olivia Travel? So I just got back from a cruise where Chris Williamson was performing. And there were 2,600 lesbians taking over this cruise ship. And I just can't tell you what a high it is, how empowering. How many of you came out or grew up to music of Chris Williamson and Meg Christian and Holly Deere? Yeah. That sense of community, that listening to the music, being with women, in a space for a week, whether at a resort or on a cruise ship, the sense of freedom to be exactly yourself is really empowering. And I've been really lucky to do that. And I've tried to bring that back in terms of a microcosm and create that same feel for people at Dancing Divas. Because we need that. It's really important.
So I'll just mention the bookstore, which is a little after a lot of this other stuff. But yeah, we opened in 1994. Spider and I started the bookstore. And again, creating that sense of community, which I think is a common thread through all of this. We sold books, but we were also on a place where you could network, where you could look on the bulletin board. Maybe you needed a housemate, or you could ask me, where can my partner and I buy some rings for a commitment ceremony? We just got kicked out of this one jeweler's place. Can you recommend a jeweler? Or I need a therapist who is not going to tell me I'm crazy for being a lesbian. Do you know of any therapists? Or, I had lists behind the counter. We had lists of all kinds of things. And we had author appearances, and we had, just a lot of Pride paraphernalia and a lot of books about information about feminism, about lesbianism, books that reflected our lives and that you couldn't find anywhere else in Boulder. So, that was a, big, huge part of my life and Spider's life. Spider was the book buyer. She was the one who kept our, kept us body and soul together, because I surely didn't make any money with the bookstore. This year's where was it?
So we opened in 1994 at a little space on 15th across from the Liquor Mart. Does anybody remember the Liquor Mart? It's gone. But it was near Boulder High School. And we were there for, I think, 6-7 years, something like that. And then we moved over to 10th Street, right off the Pearl Street Mall, a bigger space. And that was across from Costa J's, which is also no longer there. But is it still there? Oh, okay.
It's healed for.
Yeah, we're gone. They're still there.
Yeah, we don't go to Pasta J's.
No, we don't want to go to Costa J's, but yeah, we were, yes. So, so 14 years and a really wonderful experience. And it's sad to see it go, but it was just unsustainable at a certain point. Yes, by the
Thinking of connections, because I went to your bookstore, I just been to a there, this poster up there for audition. Yes, and that's how I kind of trained them. And then my wife and us.
yay.
Connections here because of all the work.
Yeah. You know, and just one thing I'll say about community is, as hard as it's been off and on to be a lesbian and to be a feminist, a lot of people don't have this sense of community. The wider world, there isn't this sense of community, which is so important to us. It's what's saving us to have this. And for a lot of people, it just doesn't exist. And so in a way, it's kind of an odd way of looking at it. But but I think that I feel lucky now to have all of this. We are so lucky.
Yeah.
We are.
I just wanted to add something about, by the way, you don't have to dance to go to divas. You can hang out. Trust, I'm a testament to that. Sometimes I just can't do it. And you obviously didn't have to buy a book to go to the bookstore, and you don't have to sing. You can go to the concerts, one of which is pretty much, 4 of which are coming up this month.
I forgot to bring cards. But it's not in the course. You just
All right, ask anyone here. I would also say that part of building community in a different way is, I didn't mention that I'm a host and a producer for Outsources on KGNU Radio. Yeah, I've been for the past 12 years. We are a team, I'm only on once a month, but we're a team of gay, lesbian, bisexual, trans, actually no bi right now, but we've got a coverage of a lot of different ways of looking at the world and a lot of different coverage. And thanks to Glenda, I got dragged into that. She managed to sneak out the door later, but we drag her back quite a bit to interview her because she always has lots to say as well. And while I'm on the subject of Glenda Russell, I just wanted to point out that she's got a wonderful blog that is helpful right now, the Tools for Troubled Times. And because Glenda forgot her cards, Angie in the yellow gold right back there has some, and there's some by the door that I brought as well, because we know Glenda's not a PR person. So I just wanted to mention that is another way of community for people who are still struggling to whether to come out or come to something or be known as a heterosexual lesbian choir member or whatever. You can always listen on the radio or kgnu.org and no one will know.
Did you choose? So first a comment and then a question. First of all, Susie goes far and wide, and my wife and I met on an Olivia cruise to Alaska, and she was the coordinator. So that was in 2006. So there you go. We got part of it already. My question was about, we stand on your shoulders as giants. So thank you, first of all. And my life as a lesbian is easy because of you. Until now. Yeah. This is really new for me.
and overwhelming. And so my question is, who are the groups, who is acting up now that I can get involved in?
You may have to start the next group, but
Well, I'm the extrovert in this family, so that might
Audience comments welcome if anyone, has insight that's not up here.
There are a lot of people mobilizing online. I mean, Saturday was a good example. I hope you got to go to that. The signs of creativity in our communities are awesome. I loved it. All I did at some point was just start taking pictures of the signs, just saying, okay, this is going to go into my next collage. This is so good. But I think partly there's a lot of people mobilizing. There's a really great organizing paper, but this is the old academic education approach from People's Action on organizing, and gives you a lot of ideas of what to do. And it doesn't take much to organize. You don't have to have a group you can go to, but you could just make a group. And the other is there are so many easy ways now to reach out and touch your representative. And today I was thinking of talking to Gabe Evans in our next door neighbor for me in Lafayette over in Weld County that barely defeated Caraveo. And I thought, I think I'm going to start sending him emails and calls and talk about how much I love walking and knocking on doors. And I'm going to make sure I'm there to see that he's not around this next time. Not to kill him, only to make sure he's not in office anymore. Because he's an example of somebody who needs to move it, to stop pretending like nothing is happening. So I think anything to make yourself visible and our communities visible is important.
Anybody else?
Rocky Mountain Equality, obviously, One Colorado. These are two big organizations. Rocky Mountain Equality here.
50-51, it's 50 states.
50-51, Mobilize, Indivisible, Move On.
Anybody welcome? I mean, Rocky Mountain Equality.
Yeah.
50 state.
Yeah, and there's a lot of these big nationals do have chapters or whatever, groups or whatever. And
Longmont Leads with Love, that they have a protest every Sunday, right? That's Saturday.
Leads with Love, Longmont. There's lots more. There is lots more, but I need to wrap us up, I'm afraid. We worked very hard on some unique merch based on some of our archives. Addie's back there in case you have an interest in anything. There are QR codes to donate to this particular project that it goes through Rocky Mountain Equality. Just the majority of our life in this building has been during a pandemic, and so tomorrow is never quite guaranteed for us. If you do value this, if you value that our board of directors and staff decides to put this where our energy goes, do consider sharing it with other people and telling them to come. So thank you so much. Have a lovely day.